Okay, we're on. Boom. All right, so you're writing these things down. We're actually only going through these first two things today. It's going to be real basic, real simple. Just like I was talking about someone out in the hall, this is actually really easy. I'm not lying. Okay, today is going to be very minimal work. You just got to follow the simple math. Again, no more than multiplying and adding and finding some percentages. Basic grade school math. But the word plurality, we just talked about majority means more than half. Plurality means, well, I'm actually going to go to the definition here and compare it to majority. Then we'll talk about historically what's happening right now and what's happened in the past. Okay? Plurality method. So vote for one candidate and most votes win, but may not necessarily be a majority. It's not a majority. Plurality win means you have won the election, but you have less than 50% of the votes. Strange. Well, I knew this happened historically in presidential elections. So first trivia question I gave my first hour was, what is the last president to win the presidency by plurality? Talking about, silence, talking about the overall, not electoral college votes, but the overall population percentage of votes. What's the answer? It's not Abraham Lincoln, but that is one of them, and I never knew that. So I found out something, I learned something today. Which one? George W. Bush is correct. George W. Bush did not win the majority of the population's votes, but he did win the electoral college amount of votes. So he won the votes in the right states that had more electoral college votes. What is the last president that won two presidencies consecutively, was a two-term president, and never won a majority vote? So in both elections, did not win the majority of the population's votes. Anyone know that trivia question? That wasn't George W. Bush, because the next one one of them he did get the majority of the votes. Do you know? It's not Grover Cleveland. But he has won, I think he did, in one of his elections, he did not win the majority. I don't know. I don't think it was Andrew Johnson. I don't think he was back-to-back. The last one. It definitely wasn't the last one. So let's put it that way. The last president that won two consecutive elections never won the majority. Not Reagan. Reagan was a landslide in both. Reagan was one of the most popular presidents ever. Correct. William Clinton. Bill Clinton never won. And as a matter of fact, I have this. I found this. And what's fascinating historically, I found this online. This is amazing. And actually, I do remember this as a kid. I mostly remember this because, I'm going to be honest, and this is sad, Saturday Night Live. Saturday Night Live had one of the funniest parodies of Bill Clinton going against George W.H. Bush with Ross Perot. And actually, who played Ross Perot was Dana Carvey, and who played George W.H. Bush was Dana Carvey. He played both roles. But I remember how ridiculous this election was, but look at Ross Perot's percentages. That is astounding. And all I'm going to say right now is if there was a third-party candidate right now, they would be very successful. Because right now we don't have two good choices. I think everyone would agree with that across the boards, that the two choices that we have right now are not good. But look at the percentages, and this is actually what happened in that election. I remember this. George Bush lost because of Ross Perot. Ross Perot pulled so many Republican votes away from the Republican Party that that's the only reason Bill Clinton won the election. And most people would agree with that. And it is fascinating to actually think about that, especially in the conditions that we're in right now, where his wife is now running, and she probably wouldn't even be what she is right now if Bill Clinton didn't win that first election. Maybe, maybe not. Maybe she would have come a little bit earlier. Who knows? Following that election, as a matter of fact, this was one of the only times that when they had debates. Anyone watch the debate last night? Okay. That one was not as bad as the last one. The last one was like a mud throwing match. I mean, it was horrible. This one at least is a little bit more cordial, at least from the parts that I saw. But back in the day, Ross Perot was so powerful that there was a 3-person debate. All the debates included Ross Perot because he was so powerful of a candidate. Anyone remember Ross Perot or ever remember the name historically? Okay, well, he was not allowed in the debates in the next election in 1996, and yet, I remember he was not powerful enough. He still, in the very next consecutive election, pulled 8.4% of the votes. And again, he pulled that away from mostly what people would say the Republican Party, but still Bill Clinton did not get 100%, very close. I'm sorry, over 50%. He probably still would have won that election without Perot being in there. But the first one, many people agree he never would have. Okay, now some other names that were thrown out there. I'm going to put this on our whatchamacallit. Sorry, there's your pictures. That's illegal. Okay. So that's called winning by plurality. Okay. Now, plurality really means if there's 3 or more candidates, I believe, and you just end up having the most amount of votes. George W. Bush winning by a lower percentage of the population's vote. He won because of how the Electoral College works, not because of plurality. So there's a little difference there. So then I'm going to put online this, and I found this historically kind of interesting because you threw out some names out here. But here are the 10 presidents that won by not getting 50% of the votes. So John Quincy Adams. And then in this, there's little historical nuggets of information. I did not know that Abraham Lincoln, who said Abraham Lincoln, by the way, was one of them. And it's very interesting what they say about this. It was because the Democratic Party was fractured by North Democrats and South Democrats. So they split up that candidacy, which made Abraham Lincoln, who had turned into a Republican, the only Republican, and he ended up getting the majority of, or the plurality of the votes because of that would be the correct term. I know this historically. Woodrow Wilson, the only reason he won was because Theodore Roosevelt, which we know was a 2-term president, his friend was William Howard Taft. And Howard Taft, through Theodore Roosevelt's support, was able to win the election, I believe, I'm just going off of memory, right after Roosevelt. But after Taft got the presidency, Theodore Roosevelt was a little unhappy where the country was going and what Taft was doing. So after Taft's 4 years, he went and tried to get the presidency again. What did he ultimately do? Pulled votes away from Taft, and Wilson ended up winning because of it. So he basically screwed up the Republican Party in doing something like that. And then there's good old Willie right here. 42.9% only of the vote in 1992. And he actually should be listed twice because he got, then Richard Nixon, blah, blah, blah. You used to mention Grover Cleveland, right? Okay, Grover Cleveland's one, and so on and so on and so forth. So interesting reading. The reason I put that in there is because give you a solid base for what winning by plurality means. And it's happened historically many, many, many times in our presidency. Thrown in your face. So again, just wanted to share with you historically what we have seen in the past, and now an actual just example of it thrown at you in the math that you're going to have to do. And it's not hard. It's really grade school math. But you see a vote, and you tally up the votes. Since there's 4 people, all you have to win is win by plurality, just having the most amount of votes compared to the other candidates. And with 4 people, it's unless you're very popular, it's very tough to get a majority of the votes. So then you will have to win by what's called plurality. Just a term, a word that you are going to have to know. Sorry for my voice. I don't even know why this is doing this. Okay. So obviously you can see Bonnie has the most amount of votes. But then the other thing we're going to ask you to do, boy, I really hope you know how to do this. This is grade school stuff. Is what percentage of the votes did each candidate get? Well, all that requires you do is add up all the votes and then divide the number of votes that person got by the total. And of course, what should these percentages add up to become? What should those percentages add up to become? 100, because everything is covered as far as that is concerned. I don't think I have to cover that any more than I just said. So, to find out what a majority win would be, It's more than just dividing the total by 2. It's dividing the vote by 2 and then what? You got to add 1. Why do you got to add 1? Because if you divide by 2 and just leave it, what is that? That's half. What if the other person gets the other half? Did you win? No. So majority is 1 more than half the total. And of course, if you had a number that was odd, which you don't have in this question, this is just an idea off to the side. Hey, what if this happened? You divide by 2 and you get a decimal. Well, all you got to do is round that decimal up because that would represent a majority. You don't cut people in half, by the way, unless you want to go to jail. What? Okay, so the next thing is completely different stuff. It's a ranking system where you rank some positions. Now we were just talking about baseball MVP of the league, or actually also Hall of Fame votes. I think work this way. I think when the people in the Hall of Fame committee, I think they get to choose 3 people, and they rank them first. I think this person should go, then second, and then third. Maybe not. I'm not sure if that one quite works, but I think MVP in baseball does work where I think this person's number 1, this one's person number 2, and this one's person number 3, and that first place vote is weighted over the second and the third place.
That is how baseball works.
Yes. Okay, well that's similar to how a board account works. A board is just pretty basic though. First choice is assigned as many points as there are candidates. The last place person, you just give a 1. So if there's 5 people that you're voting for, your favorite person, you give a 5. Okay, basically your vote saying that they're my number 1, you just gave them 5 points weighted. Then this person I like second, they get 4. Next person 3, they actually get 3. The fourth person only gets 2 points. Then this person I like the least, Mr. Samuels, he gets 1. Okay, so this chart, what you got to understand is this is the amount of votes each person got. So Aaron got 2,359 first place votes. Then 1,368 second place votes, so on and so on and so forth. So this chart represents the amount of each vote for each candidate. It's not the points yet. I can't even write today. Couldn't talk. What's a vote? That's a V. So that's the amount of each votes of each of the votes in each category. And of course, these should all, whatever this equals, that's what this should equal. Because you have to go into ballot and say, all right, who's your number 1? Who's your number 2? Who's your number 3? Who's your number 4? So if I add this row, it should be equal to the adding of this row and this row and this row. Because everyone has to cast a 1 through 4 vote. But if you give them a first place vote, you're giving them a weighted 4 points. Now when you look at this, who has the most first place votes? Bonnie. But who has the most second place votes by a lot, it looks like? So who do you think might win, Charles or Bonnie? I really feel like Charles' second place votes are way more than everybody else's. And his first place votes are pretty strong as well. But that's not going to be good enough as far as those lazies that just say, oh, Charles wins. What we're going to need to do is actually show the point values actually multiplied and added. So Aaron has 2,359 first place votes. That's 2,359 fours for a weighted category. And then 1,368 threes, and so on and so on and so forth. So what I will grade, just like I graded on your last test, is the actual valid numbers when we got to the written. And if your numbers are off, then you're wrong. Everyone should have the same numbers here if we all have the same chart we're working off of. It's not really a big deal. And of course, who wins? Charles in charge. Anyone know that show? That's from the 80s. So Charles would win on this board account. Now, Again, back to the MVP voting. They actually have, I assigned 2 questions about baseball in there. It's a modified board account, wherever you weight the categories. The weightings may not be 4, 3, 2, 1. It may be a little bit different, but that's the idea. Right? You can take the rest of this down. That's pretty much it.